In this video, we're going to update the player bullets inside of our player scene. We're going to update our Robocop script, as well as create a base enemy class so that we can easier create a turret enemy as well. So first things first, what we can do is delete the player bullets out of our test scene. This is not the best way for us to handle this. I want to actually put this inside of our player scene. So now, after we delete those out, I'm actually also going to delete a couple of extra enemies out of our test scene as well. In our player script, or in our player scene, we want to add a new, just regular node. Just call it bullets. We want to make that an onReady variable as well. We need to do something similar to what we were doing in the test scene. We need to make sure that the bullets are going to get freed after they reach a certain point if they don't hit an enemy. So we want to make a method called manage bullets. And in here, before bullet, this is the same thing that was in our test scene. Get children, and then I'm just going to copy and paste this in actually. Then we just make sure that we destroy them after they reach a certain distance if they don't hit an enemy. Now we need to go up to our physics process, or no, into our process, and we need to actually call this method, so manage our bullets. Then we need to go into our attack state. And inside of our shoot method, we need to make a couple of adjustments. So we no longer need this at all, since the owner is now going to be our player. So we'll just do that check just as a safety check. And then we also want to check if the owner has the node by the name bullets. And we need to change parent here to be, so not owner, we want to do player, and update this to bullets. I should be able to play the game, and it should be functioning just as it was before. Okay. We are getting one error in here where we don't have player bullets in the test or in our level. We no longer need that since we're going to be putting them on the actual player. Now we can move on to updating our Robocop to give him a death state and also play some effects when he actually dies. So let's go into our enemy script, or our Robocop script. Okay, and we also, let's go into the scene, and let's create a new state. It's just a regular node. We're just going to call this death state, and let's attach a script to it. So we're going to do a class name here, enemy death state. And it's going to extend an enemy state, just as we've done for the others. And the only method we're going to need here is an enter method. We're going to come back to this once we have some other things set up. But now we can go back to our enemy, and we need to go into our animation player and actually create our death animation. So let's copy the idle. Let's duplicate this one. Let's call it death. We're going to delete all of, we can actually delete all these out. We need to make a new sprite 2D. We're just going to call this death sprite 2D. And in here, we're going to find in our FX, we're going to call enemy explosion is going to be our texture. And in the offset, or in the animation, it's going to be 6 horizontal frames. Okay. So now in here, in our death animation, we're just going to key through all of these. Need to make this a little bigger. Okay. Let's change the snap to 0.1. Make this a little quicker. Okay, we're going to do 0.6. And we're also, while we're at it, we're going to make another audio stream player. You can drag this into our audio. We're going to call this death audio. After we add the death audio, we can go into our animations and press add track, add an audio playback on the death audio, and drag and drop in our enemy death sound file. So now when we play this, or sorry, not play this, I'm gonna Go back into our animation, player animation. That's going to be played every time our enemy explodes. So go back into our player script, our enemy script, and we need to drag in both of these. We need to drag in our death state that we were working on, as well as our death audio. Once we have that, we're going to scroll down to where our player is currently dying, where we're connecting to queue free and playing our damaged audio. And all we're going to do here is go to enemy state machine. We're going to change our state to the death state. Okay, so now when our player dies or has health that's less than or equal to 0, he should transition right into the death state. So now we can go back to our death state script and we can actually fill this out. So we're going to tap into our enemy state machine, and I'm sorry, just our RoboCop. And we're going to change his velocity to X. I don't want him to move when he's dying. And then in RoboCop, we are going to play his death audio. And we're also going to play his death animation. To make sure that this properly or fully plays out, we're going to put in a wait on our animation. And then after that, we can queue him free. Okay, so when we play this, or wait, not enemy, RoboCop. So now when we play this, the death animation, alright, so we're going to fix that in a second. It is playing, okay? So now we need to go back into our animation on RoboCop. First thing, we're going to bring this up to hit him right in the center of his chest, I think. And then we need to go into our animation player. And we don't want this to be visible. We don't want this death sprite. I'll drag this up here. We don't want the death sprite to be visible until he dies. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is go to our visibility properties. We can key this so that we go into the reset. Visibility is going to be off whenever this guy loads now on the reset track. So if we go in here, now you can see it's over. But now we need to make sure that it reappears on our death animation. So in our death animation, we need to go back to the death sprite, key the visibility to be on, right? And then if we wanted to be extra safe, we can also drag this to be match this size here. If we want to be extra safe, we can enter the key here to where when the animation ends, we're turning our visibility off. Shouldn't really matter though, because we are queue freeing it. Okay. So the other thing that we have to do when that one, you can see the sprite for RoboCop stuck around a little too long. So I think we want to do the visibility thing on RoboCop when we enter this as well. So put that at the beginning. And then we need to go back to our reset though, and I do want him to be visible on the reset, which is just our, whatever we start at. Okay. All right. So I think that looks all right. So now what I want to do before we start building out another enemy is I want to refactor our RoboCop script a little bit more, and I want to create a base enemy class for us so that any enemies that we build on from here on out is going to be able to inherit some properties from our base enemy class. So let's create a new enemy scene. It's going to be of character body 2D. We'll name it enemy. Let's just save that. We'll go into our scenes, enemies. So I am going to create a new folder for RoboCop, which will drag him in. We can just do this in our root folder for enemies. And then we're going to attach a script for enemy as well. Class name enemy. And there's going to be two things that we're going to require for enemies. So we're going to go into here. We're going to add a sprite 2D. It's going to need a sprite 2D. And we're going to create a node. And this one is going to be called bullets. I'm also going to pull out the direction variable, which we've set over in RoboCop. Get rid of this. So right now we're just defaulting it. So I'm going to get rid of this actually. And we're just going to do this in our ready method now. Directions might be different between, or starting directions might be different for our enemies, just depending on how we're implementing them. So just want to leave that as is for right now. You're seeing we're getting an error here. It's because we're currently not inheriting from our enemy class. So if I update that, direction will go away. Another thing that we're going to keep in our base enemy class is the set direction method. So we're going to pull this out of Robocop, put this in here. And so now, since we our Robocop is inheriting or extending the enemy class, he's just going to have that method built in. We aren't getting this sprite figured out here because we don't have these onReady variables. So as soon as we have that, those errors will go away. Another thing we're going to want to do is update our enemy state machine and enemy state. Initially we were doing this specifically for Robocop, but for now we want to do it for any enemy. So we need to go, we have to update our enemy state, and we also have to update inside of our enemy state machine, where we were initially passing in Robocop. Now we're just passing in enemy, and state.enemy is going to equal the enemy that we're passing in. And that should be it for everything inside of the enemy state machine. We'll get some errors if that's not configured properly. Now we need to go back into our individual enemy states and make some updates there as well, because any place we were referencing Robocop generically in these states needs to be moved to enemy now. So I can show you what I mean here. Yeah, these needs to be enemy now. Since we're referring to our enemy class, or our any enemy of the that's extending the enemy class, we need to update our run state as well. And if you highlight this and you hold Alt, I'm on Windows, but you are going to be able to select multiple things at once. And then I can just type in enemy and update them all at once. Now let's go ahead and create our enemy turret. So we're going to create a new character body 2D and call this turret. And we're going to attach a script, call it turret, put it in our scenes, enemies. We'll make a new folder called turret. We'll save it in there. Let's also save our scene inside a turret. Give this a class name, called turret, and make sure it extends enemy. So we need to set up our animation player, so let's add that node. We're going to need a detection component, which we can just drag in. We're going to need a gun muzzle, so we can need a marker 2D. Let's call this a gun muzzle. So to work on our animation player, let's add our sprite 2D. And in the texture, we can go up into our assets folder and find the turret. So here we are. Let's reposition this a little bit. And we go into animation and we are 6 horizontal frames. Okay. So now we can make our idle animation and let's just key in our frames here. We'll make this at 0.1. So this will be 0.6. Okay, so let's make this loop. And we hit play. It's not the prettiest animation, but it should do the job. I'm going to want to add a hitbox to this as well. So or a hurtbox to this as well. If the player runs into this, we want him to take damage. So let's add our hurtbox. We'll add a collision shape. Oops. Just going to give this a square or a rectangle. I think honestly the default size is probably okay, maybe a little smaller. Then we need to make sure on our hurtbox we have the right collision set up. So we want this to be an enemy and it can mask for our player. We can also turn off monitoring for this and just be monitorable. Okay, so now we should have, we need to add them to our test scene. Let's add the turret. Now we should have a collision layer set up. Oh, so I already have a sprite set up in our base enemy class, so I don't want to be including that there. So now if I save this and rerun it, everything should be working. Okay, again, here we need to update this to enemy now that we generalize this. And get those permissions errors. Let's just restart. Cool, I'm already taking damage if we run into him. You can see down at the bottom we're getting errors about the bullets node not being in our enemy or turret scene. So we can go to, we want to go to turret. We're going to add bullets on our node. And even though RoboCop currently isn't shooting bullets, he is going to need the node. Which I think down the road we can add that, but for right now, let's just give him the node. So back in our turret script, our turret scene, let's go into 2D and let's check out our gun muzzle. So I'm gonna actually go into a different, I wanna go into a different sprite, yeah, so I can see, well, this should be good actually. And then we wanna go to our gun muzzle. I'm going to, I don't know why it's not letting me select it, but I'm going to place the gun muzzle right there in the center. I do want to take note of this, so we're on the -8 on the x-axis, so we are going to need to create another gun muzzle offset just like we did with our player. So back in the turret script, let's create a constant of gun muzzle offset. It's going to be an int, and it's going to equal 8. Okay. So let's just get our base turret set up. We're going to need our animation player, our detection component, the gun muzzle. We shouldn't need the sprite 2D right now, but we are going to need bullets. So which one didn't drag? Gun muzzle. This already exists in the enemy class, so we don't need it. Okay. So let's go back into the 2D. We need to give our detection component a collision shape. For this one, I'm going to do a rectangle as well. And what I'm going to do for this one is also, if you click and hold while you're doing this, if you hold Alt, it keeps does it evenly on both sides. So I'm going to drag this out. I want this to be a little bit longer. So now if we play this, we can see what this looks like. Okay. Okay. I'm not doing anything, but we have the base turret set up. So I'm going to create our ready function. And we're going to connect to our detection component. So we do player entered, connect, on player entered, and do the same thing for player exited. Let's make these methods just so we don't get any more errors. Okay, I'm going to set the direction variable to be equal to 1. Now in our process method, we want to call our set direction. So it's going to track where our player is moving when we enter the detection component. Alright, we're not animating anything here yet, so that's why we're not seeing anything. And when our player is exiting the detection component, all we're going to be doing is we're going to play our idle animation. On all caps. So now we want our turret to actually be able to shoot. So we're going to create a new scene. It's going to be an area 2D. We're going to call this enemy bullet. We want to attach a script to it. We can call the enemy bullet. I'm going to put this in our base enemies folder. We might reuse it down the road. Let's create that. We can save our enemy bullet scene as well. Right here, we're going to call this class name of enemy bullet. And we're actually going to extend our bullet class. So we're going to extend the existing bullet class. Even though we built that out for our player, we're going to reuse that for our enemy right now. And the only thing that we're going to implement inside of this right now is going to be a physics process method where this will look familiar to if the bullets are a certain distance away from our player, they're going to queue free. So we're going to get global position .x, which is going to be of our bullet. And we're going to tap in our player manager and our player's global position .x. And if the distance is greater than 500, we're going to destroy it. And I can call this destroy method because I'm extending bullet, which is already here. Our ready method here, we're going to override the bullet speed. So we're going to just call our own bullet speed. It's going to be equal to 300. So in bullet, this is an export variable. We're just going to override it in hours. And I think in order for this to work, we can't have a ready method here and then not a ready method in the parent class. So we're just going to add a ready method with just pass. So it should allow us to do that. Okay, now we need to give our enemy bullet the same stuff that our parent bullet class has. We need an animated sprite and we need a hurt box. And our hurt box needs a collision shape. And then inside the animated sprite, we go back up into our assets, and we're going to use this shop PNG in animation. Just drag it in. Or sorry, we got to click on here, new sprite frames. Click into it, and we are going to call this. Yeah, I think default is actually fine. And go into here, go into our assets, and then find the shot.png. Right here, we are 1 vertical. And we are 3 horizontal. Okay, so now we have this for our enemy bullet. More or less the same thing as our player bullet, just a different color. And I'm going to turn up the FPS though, just to make it look like it's going a little bit faster. And in the hurt box, I'm going to give it a collision shape that's a rectangle. And just leave it right there. Now back in our turret, we need to do a couple things. In our onPlayer enter, we're going to need to play an animation, which we haven't made yet, which is going to be shoot. And then we have if bullets dot get children dot size is less than 3. We're going to shoot. Shoot is a method we haven't made yet, so let's just put a placeholder in here right now. Okay. So we're doing the same sort of checks that we did on our player, where if there's a certain amount of bullets already in the scene for any given enemy, we're not going to let them create more. That shouldn't happen, but it's more or less just a safety check. So we need to go back into our animation player, and what we want to do, actually, let's duplicate our reset. We'll call this shoot. And all we're doing is, yeah, this is fine. This is exactly what we want. We just want it to be looking in one direction. So this is good. So we go back into our turret, we can start building out the shoot method, where we are going to want to do something similar to what we did for our player bullets, where we need to get a bullet, which is going to be a bullet scene.instantiate. And that bullet scene is going to be of the enemy bullet this time. So we can click and drag this up. It's going to be an onReady variable. I'm going to lowercase this, and it's going to be of the type packed scene. And we need to get our bullet position, which is going to be a vector 2. And it's going to equal our gun muzzle dot global position. Why is this? Oh, enemy bullet needs to be called bullet scene. Okay, that error should go away. Then we need to go about placing our gun muzzle's position. It's going to be equal to our negative gun muzzle offset. If we have a direction that's less than 0, else it's just our gun muzzle offset. That's just going to help place the bullet in the right place. And then if we have bullets, meaning the bullets node, we're going to do bullets.callDeferred, and we're going to add a child to our bullets node, and it's going to be of the type bullet. And bullet.direction equals 1 if sprite.flip h, else -1. We also need to do bullet.global position is equal to our bullet position. Okay. Alright, now we should be able to see this work. Let's kill that guy. Okay, cool. So this is working. The bullets are shooting. The one thing that's not happening is they're not hitting our player, and that has to be because we didn't set our hurtbox layers. So on here, this thinks it's a player layer. We need to make it an enemy layer. So now if we play this, we should take some damage if we get hit by a bullet. Okay, that is also something we're going to take care of. That is not what we want to happen. There we go. There's another bug here too, where if I'm running away, it shoots me in the wrong direction. That's not like a natural... It shoots me back towards the turret when it should really be pushing me further away. So let's fix those two bugs right now. It took me a little bit of debugging prior to filming this video, where what we're going to be doing is we need to basically lock our state machine so that it doesn't do anything else when we enter our death state. It's just going to be the last thing that ever happens for that enemy. So inside of our death state, the first thing that we're going to do is call our enemy state machine, and we're going to call lock state, which is something that we're going to be making right now. And in our enemy state machine, we're going to go down to our change state, and we're going to do one other check here, or locked, because we need to go up to the top and add a locked bool, default it to false, and then we want to make our last method func lock state. And if we call it, we do locked equals true. So what this is doing is it's never going to end up changing states if we hit this locked status, which is what we're going to be doing in our turrets, or in our player, or sorry, in RoboCop's death state. So it's not something that I can reproduce every time that we do this, like it wasn't a consistent bug, but now this should fully be taken care of. Okay, now we need to handle that bug. So we need to go into our knockback state script. In our physics method, what we want to be doing, and if we have a velocity, we're going to multiply it by a -1 or a 1 depending on if we have direction. So it's going to be a -1 if player.direction. So if we have a direction that's greater than 0, else it's just going to be 1. So now this should fix that. That's also not good. We ended up taking damage from the explosion, so we'll actually go back and fix that. There we go, a little bit better. Okay, so what we also need to do inside of our RoboCop's animation player is we need to go into our hurt box, and what we want to be doing is we want to key this as on in our reset. So it's monitorable when we are reset, but on death, what we're going to do is turn monitorable off. Okay, so now it's no longer monitoring, so it can't do any more damage. So now if we play this, this should fix that last bug. Yep, all right, we can walk through with no problems. All right, well, I think that about wraps up this video, and I'll see you in the next one.